Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Lawless podcast. Today we're joined by Josh.
Hello.
And John.
Hello.
And Josh, if you'd like to just give a little bit of brief introduction of yourself and just explain how we know each other and a bit about you, please.
Yeah, me and Alex know each other through college, and I'm from Trebs. I do politics, and I'm from Leeds.
Nice one, man. Thank you. And John, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, same as Josh, really. Me and Josh live a bit closer together. We're all quite close to Alex. And I'm from Sunderland, and I'm doing primary education in at Durham as well.
Nice one. So yeah, John, if you'd just like to tell us a little bit about Sunderland then, please.
Yeah.
What's it like there?
Well, Sunderland is different from Durham because I feel like Durham, it's very much the south, but in the north, you know what I mean? It's a little hub for the south.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Sunderland, it is proper north. It's completely different to anything you'd experience here. It's very, like, when you tell people you're from Sunderland around here, you get the looks and the really?
Sunderland,
I think because it's only 20 minutes away as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird, like the cultural divide between Durham and most of the northeast, I'd say as well.
Yeah, because here it's just like, it's a lovely little town village, but back in Sunderland it's very sort of, you have your bad ends and your bad areas and the dodgy chavs you'll come up against, but I did love it when I was living there, to be fair, because you do feel, you feel your roots while you live there. And yeah, it's born and bred, been there my whole life until I moved here. So.
Nice one. What would you say are the key sort of culture shocks, like the differences between Durham and Sunderland?
Well, I'd say it's all very, it's just the little things, really. It's like, no offence, Josh, but I remember in my first week here, I think, I was talking about travel to sort of inspire some conversations and stuff like that.
Good man.
And then you and Katie, our other flatmate, ended up bonding over travelling to the same place in Singapore while you're on the same connecting flight to Dubai or something like that. And then it's just little things like that where it's it's a culture that you'd never have been from a working class area, because you'd never get to experience stuff like that. And there's just the little things as well, just it's usual, just typical conversations that people have amongst themselves that you can't feel included in, because
exactly, where are you going skiing this year?
Yeah.
And it's they'd say that was a God-given right that you would go skiing this year, and if you didn't, it's what are you doing? Why aren't you doing that? You know, it's what, you're not going.
Well, yeah, because you tell people that you can't ski as well, and people are when did you not learn to ski?
Well, they see it as riding a bike. It's how have you not learned to ski? Honestly, man. But no, I think skiing's good fun, but I think it's a lot, isn't it? To be fair.
Well, I wouldn't know.
No, one day, John, you got to do it at some point. Just get it done.
The Alps 2020 too.
I feel like such a Durham stereotype that I used to go skiing all the time.
Of course.
Oh man, but yeah. So, Josh, tell me about Leeds then. What was that like?
I mean, I feel like Leeds is a real mix. As you say, in Sunderland you have a mix of people, but I feel like Leeds is very different to the most of Yorkshire in general. Most of Yorkshire is very, very working class. It's quite rural, but with Leeds it's kind of you've got a big city feel there. Yeah. And I'm from central Leeds as well, so yeah, I don't know. I feel we're kind of in our own little bubble
within the wider sort of Leeds and Yorkshire area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's sort of very good comparison to Durham in the northeast as well, isn't it?
Durham, 100%, we are in a bubble. Just in general, though, I have no idea what is going on outside of Durham.
Yeah, it does feel very sort of exclusive to just.
Yeah, so this is the world. The world stops when you cross the bridge to a different part. Or when you get to Giles Gate or something, it's that's it. That's the world. That's mental. And it's quite strange, isn't it, to think that what has actually happened here is it's come from a sort of a working class town, and then progress into sort of an academic uni place, and that shift is so interesting, and to see how them sort of cultures come together, and how the fact on the Saturday you always have the sort of locals night, so it sort of keeps the groups not mixing, and then when they do mix, obviously 99% of the time it's fine. But sometimes you do get that sort of clash happening as well.
Yeah, when you get here, you get told don't go out on locals night, because then there'll be there'll be scraps going on if you go out with the locals and you mix.
I know, that's really weird.
Yeah.
And you think like, why it doesn't have to be like that? Why are people, doing that sort of thing?
Yeah, it definitely is because of like the Durham bubble as well. Like, I don't know, just like the demographics of Durham are so different to like the people who live in like the neighbouring towns, I think. So like, obviously if they're put together, it doesn't always go down well.
No, that is the thing, isn't it? It's like any sort of thing like that is when people are different, they sometimes don't get on.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to just see what you've got in common as opposed to seeing these sort of differences, really.
It's not that deep.
No.
Yeah, because I feel like, especially like being from Sunderland, you get the stereotype of the Durham uni students, and then it's sort of met with like a hostility towards them. It's always, oh yeah, them posh, yada yada yada.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like,
you get all the sort of chat, don't you?
yeah. But you never think, oh yeah, I'm sure like 99% of them are sound. You think, I bet 1% of them's
It's one guy
be,
or something. Yeah, exactly. And it's that one guy who gets talked about, and all the good things that happen never get said. Sort of like the media as well. None of the good stuff's ever mentioned. It's always sort of like the headline grabbing attention. Wow, look at this horrible thing that's occurred, because your mind goes, whoa, what's that?
It does get a lot of bad press, to be fair, doesn't it, Durham here?
Yeah.
Just non-stop bad press, isn't it?
That's mental, man. But yeah, so just to move on from that, tell us a little bit about primary education. What was your sort of motivation, John, to do that?
I think it was just, when I was younger, I always had like a desire. It's not even like the whole working with children thing, because honestly, I'm not that bothered about that. It's just, I always had a desire not to be working in like a soulless job. That's what I always used to think. Think.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
When I'm older, I always used to think, oh yeah, I want to actually do something that has like it makes a change in something. You know what I mean? Because I always used to have this fear that like when I die, in like 100 years, like I'm gonna like it'll literally just be I have my stint while I'm alive, and then after I'm dead, I'm just like no influence. I feel like I want to do something that actually influences stuff.
Yeah, man.
And like actually changes stuff for after when I'm gone. You know what I mean? Leave a legacy of some sort.
And I think like education is sort of one of the best tools to do that sort of thing, because every one of them children who are going to come through your class, like I remember my good teachers. I think, Josh, would you say the same? You remember the teachers who were good, and the stinkers as well. So make sure you're a good one.
Well, yeah, because I feel like especially for like young boys without like. Sometimes when they don't have like a father figure or stuff like that, I feel like it's important for them to have someone like that, especially when it's just like a teacher that they can go and see often. You know what I mean? That's how I figured I could like make a change. But yeah, you always do remember like your good teachers. So that's what I want to be. I want to be the like the lively one that would like get everyone going. Oh yeah,
John,
like
we love John.
Yeah,
man, not just like can't wait. I really don't want to go to John's class. But no, like I think it's just about just being empathetic to them and just like understanding their problems and just picking up on the small little things, because if a child's going through something, they're not going to tell you. It's like a lot of them wouldn't just blatantly tell you, because that's just British culture, stiff upper lip bullshit,
Yeah.
Like you have to just pick up on the subtle cues and that and go, right, why has he not done his homework, or her, because it's going to be a mixed class. What's causing this kid to act out? Why are they acting out? So that's the big thing with all of it, is where a lot of people go wrong is they just judge people because of the action. They go, why are they doing that? What's a horrible person? Why would you ever do that sort of thing? And they don't peel it back and go, where's this coming from? What's going wrong in this person's life that makes them do this? And when you do that, it's a lot more like, I want to help you, as opposed to like punish you. Because like giving someone a detention, you're like, it's just like, just punishing them and actually make them resent you for doing that. And they don't learn anything from that. You're just like, whatever, I'll just sit here and like just do my time like a prison.
Yeah, it is a very basic form of punishment, isn't it? Just, I can't be bothered to actually like discipline you properly, so I'll just put you in a room
sit
by
in a
yourself
room
for an hour.
Yeah, you can write some lines out or something like, and it's like, what am I actually gaining from this? And then you do have to see the motivation. Is like, what is the point? Is this sort of to punish me? Is this sort of to try and help me not do this again? And it's that sort of like pleasure pain scale, where if the pain of having to sit in a room for an hour outweighs the sort of pleasure of doing whatever thing you're doing, is that going to like deter you from doing it again? And if that thing is like you just did by accident, like let's say for example your home life isn't brilliant and you couldn't do your homework, and they've just disregarded the actual causal factor but then punished you for that, and then your parents are like, where the fuck is he? Why has he not come home for an hour? It's that sort of like thing where it just requires a bit of empathy. I think a lot of problems can be solved by just like love and empathy. Because if you just like try and go, how can I help you, as opposed to how can I punish you, you know?
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely like a mindset I take as well, because I always see bad behaviour now as like an opportunity to reform instead of an opportunity to punish, because I feel like that's a problem that too many people have. It's always, I feel like even like with all modern issues, never mind just like classroom issues, it's always just like, if people approach things with like the mindset of what's the most loving thing to do, then you'll solve most problems, instead of just like, oh yeah, we need to go about this the stiff way or the hard way.
Yeah, we need to be hard on drugs.
Yeah.
We need to be hard on crime. It's like, how about you just change society so people don't need to commit crime?
Yeah.
How about you just change the way it works so people have a lot of opportunities, so you don't have to, you know, steal or do some other thing because you can't feed your family or something. You know, because like, it's all societal really. A lot of it is like sort of that, and it's like, I don't know, they're trying to, it's always like after the fact, isn't it? It's always like, what, this has happened, what do we do now? Well, what is the preventative measures? That should be the first thing, because, you know, even with the police force or any sort of law enforcement or anything, like, it's always after it's happened, you know? But, you know, let's say something like horrific happens, like a violent attack or something. The violent attack has happened. You may serve justice to this person afterwards. And, you know, that's questionable given the state of the justice system. However, the point is, like, you want to tackle it from a preventative side, or, you know, reform people through loving them and being kind. And then, you know, if you sit someone down, like, I think my friend was telling me how, like, she works in London as like a missionary. She was telling me how she literally stopped a lad with a machete on the street and was like, just had a conversation with him. Not even like in a weird way, just sat him down and talked to him like a human being. And it's like, she does a lot of work with like homeless people as well. She's like, it's not homeless people, I'm just having a conversation with a person.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing, you put all these like words and stigma around like different people, and then like, because you're homeless, that's now your identity, and you're seen as nothing more than a homeless person, when in reality you're just a person, and you should be seen as a person who deserves the same basic rights as other people. You know, why would you put someone down just because they've had bad luck? That could be anyone, you know. It takes a few little things to happen and then you're there. Like, so for example, I saw this video, there's this guy explaining why he was on the street. It was like, his dad had died, and then he quit his job because he got depression, and he lost his house. Like, that's 3 things that could quite easily happen to anyone. And you have to, I think it goes back to like the core principle of all religion, which is like, love thy neighbour as you love yourself. Like, any religion, that's the bottom line of it really. Because if you was like, okay, would I want to be treated like that? Would I want to be just sat on the street and no one would even like give me any money or sort of like acknowledge my existence as they walk by? No, I really wouldn't want that. So how about I help this person, you know? Because that could be me. And I think if that attitude was adopted by everyone, then we'd be living in a better world.
Yeah, because it is like stereotypes, especially with, I'd say, homeless people. It's the most prevalent stereotype, because it's always like, personally, when I was younger, you'd want to give them money. That's what I figured. And then I'd always be told by my parents, oh, don't, because they're homeless, so they're only going to go and spend it on alcohol or drugs or stuff like that. But you never think like, well, you just want to help them, don't you? So sometimes like just giving them anything is like the first instinct.
No, exactly. It's like, again, oh, they'll just spend it on drugs. Why? Why are they spending it on drugs? Because their life's pretty harsh, because they're living on the streets. So, you know, if you was faced with that, and if you even bring it back to like a psychological perspective, like, you're not getting much dopamine sitting in a fucking shop front, are you? Like, so you're gonna need to get that from somewhere else, i.e. drugs. And if that sort of like behavioural pattern has been established, which in them sort of places is likely due to the sort of crowd it is, and then you know, it's very hard to stay away from that stuff. And you know, you're not exactly going to be fucking delaying gratification if your basic human needs are met, because you don't have the capacity for that. Because, you know, even with the Maslow hierarchy of needs, if the basic human needs aren't met, nothing else can happen. So you have to meet the basic human needs, you know, and that's very hard when you haven't got shelter or any sort of like...
I think part of it is also that they can't meet their needs, so they're just trying to like cope with it.
Exactly.
And obviously when you're on drugs, if you're drinking alcohol, like, you're not cold when you're outside. You're kind of like out of it. It's like escapism, isn't it?
No, exactly. And you see that even in like developed society, even in sort of like, you know, people who have that sort of stuff, you know, like a background, sort of like house and like a family around them. Like, coping strategies are mental. Like, different things people use as coping strategies. It could be literally anything, like, you know, doing drugs, alcohol, like really anything. It's just interesting to see where they come from and where sort of like, how these patterns occur, and once they occur, how you can stop them, and when you make the conscious choice to stop them, and at what point you acknowledge, is this an issue, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's mental.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard because we definitely do live in a system that allows homelessness to exist, and I feel like most people would be morally against it, but we have like no intent to
We've
change.
just grown to accept it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, yeah.
Exactly. Like, have you heard about the small house movement? It's this movement where it's got these tiny houses. Like, it has literally what you need in it. It has like kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, small sofa.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like probably a room no bigger than what we're in now, and that's where someone can live. And for that, it's just like it gives the sort of a homeless person everything they'd need. I mean, even in Germany, they're building these sort of mini cities for them to like live in. Because even in the architecture of different cities, you can see they're being forced out. Like in New York, all the benches were taken out of like these subway stations, and you see that as sort of like anti-homelessness architecture, where like, on the bridges and that there's like spikes everywhere,
Yeah.
and sort of like when they put divides in benches on purpose to stop them being there. And then you think like, what are we doing here? We need to care about these people because they're actually human beings and not dehumanise them because they've had a bad turn in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very, very like, it's indirect, but at the same time, it's a very, very focused on homeless people. I'd say that, like, especially in the US, like, states are passing laws that, like, ban people, like, sleeping in public. So, obviously, like...
So where they're meant to go. You know?
Honestly, yeah, that kind of,
Yeah,
like...
where do I sleep then?
Yeah.
What do I do? Like, yeah.
For homeless people who, like, rely on, like, public spaces to do pretty much anything, really,
Yeah.
what is their alternative?
Exactly, and like, how can a government be for the people if they're doing something like that? Because you ask anyone, you go, do you agree with that? And
Yeah.
most people with a conscience would say no. It's disgusting.
Yeah, government for like the lucky majority, not the few who ended up in that.
Because
yeah.
they're probably not going to vote, therefore the government don't give a toss about them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is even more disgusting, really, isn't it? Like, it's mental. But yeah, just to move on to a bit of a lighter topic there, because we've got a bit intense. So you talked a little bit earlier about having like a soulless job, John, and I just want to get into that a bit more because I think that's quite an interesting concept. So how much do you think, like with different jobs, people prioritise money over like passion or any sort of a job they think that's going to be rewarding?
Yeah, I'd say money ends up being the main factor in most
That's the bottom
people's
line.
lives,
Yeah.
It's always because people assume money just equivalates to happiness, isn't it? But it doesn't always.
I think definitely money, like, if you want to be stable, you want to have like a stable life, then it is like you'd go for a job based off like the salary instead of, you know.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say it automatically leads to it. I'd say, yeah, of course you need money, but you know, sometimes it's nice to have a little bit extra. But if you're doing something that you hate in order to get, you know, that holiday to the Alps, you know, in winter, it's like, well, is it worth it? You know what I mean? Is it worth hating 40 hours of your life a week for, you know, a nice 2 weeks or a nice house or a Range Rover?
Yeah, 1 week of fun in a nice car. What's the point?
I used to do modern languages at uni last year. Like, I went to UCL. So, I don't know, just looking at, like, the career prospects of doing a modern languages degree, like, I would either end up as, like, a teacher or, like, an interpreter. And I was just checking out the salary for that. It was, like, 11 grand a year is the average for, like, an interpreter.
11k?
Yeah. And I was... Yeah,
that's like worse than Sainsbury's.
That was like one of the factors for me dropping out of UCL and transferring to Durham.
Yeah.
To change course.
It's like politics. There's so many more opportunities. So obviously you've got civil service, becoming like an MP sort of thing. You know, sort of like the secret services, like the intelligence agencies.
I'd love to do that.
Maybe something like that. A bit James Bond. You know, stuff like think tanks, lobbying. If you're feeling a bit evil. What else we got? I mean, the NGOs are so cool, but the only problem I have with them sometimes is like the murky waters where government influence is still there. Like a lot of NGOs do have a lot of government influence, but like it's where do you draw the line, and you have to obviously cooperate with the government to actually achieve anything.
It
but
depends like who they're funded by.
It's all about the funding, mate.
And
that's
it's always
bottom line. Bottom line of any organisation. Where does the money come from? Honestly, man. But yeah, so I think like for me personally, like I do not really care about money. As long as I can like live, that's all I care about. As long as you've got the bottom line, got you know, the basic human needs, as we talked about, being met. Like, I have somewhere to live, food, and, like, you know, clothing and that, which is fine. And anything else, I'm just not pour into sort of like the NGO I want to set up, and just other stuff. Because, like, it's all these sort of, that's what was good as well, is you learn about the opportunities that actually are available to you. I didn't even know that was a thing, and you're like, whoa, I can do that. Like, there's nothing stopping me doing that. Let's do that then. You know, and I think the ability to actually control it yourself. So it's basically like setting up a de facto government department that you can control. But, you know, again, it's where the money comes from, isn't it? Because then it goes back to, you have to have your own money if you don't want to be indebted to anyone. And that's with the Trump campaign. Well, a lot of it was his money, as opposed to some of the other ones where, you know, come from other sort of sources. Russia. But yeah, with them, it is interesting. So, for example, one of these sort of political models I was studying for one of my essays I've been writing, I was like, okay, let's see where their money's coming from. And then you go to Wikipedia, you go to all the different sources, and you go, oh, these are actually funded by the US government. So
Freedom House.
Freedom, yeah, mate, yeah, mate. 80% US, was it? Yeah, Congress funded them. That's a massive majority shareholder funding them, you know. And then you got to think, like, their results are going to be massively skewed by them, because they're paying for these results to be produced. It's like even academic work. Whereas if the money's not coming from sort of the university body, if it's coming from sort of private thing, like, this report brought to you by Pfizer. Okay, have you seen that stuff where the news is brought to you sponsored by people, and, you know, free and fair news on the vaccine brought to you by Pfizer. Okay, it's like cool. But yeah, I think, like, it is interesting because you always have to look at this stuff, because then you can contextualize what's being said. Because you go, okay, well, you're saying this, but why are you saying this? What is the point in you saying this, you know? And I think that's a big thing. And it's interesting to even bring that to like a micro level of people, sort of like where our beliefs come from. And we'll say who we're funded by, but you could say, where did the beliefs come from? You know, where the actual source of it. And I think when you can acknowledge why you think what you think, it does help you to sort of like understand a little bit more about what you're doing, to be honest. And, like, what's your guys' opinion on sort of core beliefs? Do you think, like, after you've been socialised through like the ages of like 0 to sort of 7 and above, then beliefs are set in stone? Or do you think sort of after that they're kind of fluid, organic, and change all the time?
I feel like you're always capable of changing your views.
Yeah, definitely.
It depends on who's in your life, what your situation is, and I guess, like, yeah, anything. I feel like people mainly change their view on things depending on the personal circumstance, like whether that be like to do with personally, like in my family there's several members who have been like homophobic in the past, and they've changed that based like on people in my family's being gay. So it depends. Like, you can always change.
Yeah, that's because I'd say when I was younger, I'd say maybe at some point you end up being fully formed, but I'd say for a long time I'd say opinions are quite like fluid, because when I was younger I always feel now in reflection that I was very influenced by like my parents' values, and I always used to internalize them. But now I feel like it's an exposure to different things. When you get exposed to different views and you start actually think a bit more open-mindedly, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, I might think about that. Yeah. That's when you start actually like forming your own opinions and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I was younger, I was a mini like version of my dad.
Yeah.
Pretty much, and like now I'm a little bit different. So yeah, it depends like what you're exposed to. Like when you start to research for yourself and like discover things, you change your views.
Mm-hmm.
No, exactly. I think that's the importance of sort of travel and sort of exposing yourself to new experiences and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Because I do feel like a lot of society pushes people into a sort of comfort zone bubble of, you know, never do anything with a bit of risk in it, never do something you could fail and stay in the little box and never question or do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, because action is kind of the key for anything, because that's the sort of a slogan I've kind of got for the podcast now, is that action creates reality. Because the whole process is like, you know, you think about something, you get emotion towards it, you know, you have plan, think about what you're going to do. It's all talk unless you do something actually tangible, you know. So I think exposing yourself to different things, whether that be travel, whether that be new people, whether that be just doing something you wouldn't do before, and that could be as small as like you're walking down the street, as opposed to putting your head down when someone looks at you, you just smile back at them, or you just hold your head a bit higher for a day, get your shoulders back a little bit, just like, even these micro things are so important. It's like any sport or anything. When you master the fundamentals, you become good. It's the fundamentals that matter, not all the fancy stuff. No, the fundamentals, And a lot of that, as we've said today, is just loving other people, and that doesn't have to be in sort of a sexual sense. That can just be like a sort of, you're a fellow human being on this earth, who, because you're a human being on this earth, you have intrinsic value, and we shouldn't have to sort of like expect anyone to do anything to gain value. It's like, oh, what university do you go to? Like, what do you do? Like, we're just people. You have intrinsic value because you're a person. It doesn't matter, Yeah,
it's kind of like, it's respect, isn't it, for other people?
Exactly. It's like just that basic respect for anyone you meet. It's just like you should talk to the sort of, the sort of person you consider to have no power, and the person you consider to have like lots of power. Just talk to them the same. Because why does one person deserve more than another? They're just different. It's like an acorn wouldn't judge an oak because it's an oak. It's just because it's a different stage and it's doing something different, But it doesn't make sense to like judge each other. That's that sort of non-judgmental way. And I found that as well here. When you just don't judge people, one, they like open up and actually talk fluidly and freely, because they know like, oh, it doesn't matter if I say this because no one's going to judge me. And it just creates a better environment. Because in the judgmental environment, no one does anything cool. Because even with this or anything else, like, what you're doing that, and if people initially get a bit weird about it, like, oh, you're doing all this stuff, and then eventually it sort of like gets traction and you do something cool, and then wow, it's like you do something cool. But you've got to take that initial steps to jump, isn't it, into the deep end. You're like, wow, I've now done this. I don't know. Are there any times in your guys' life when you've been like really pushed out of your comfort zone, like you can remember, and you've gone, wow, I really took some sort of courage to do that?
I mean, yeah, like, I used to, before I did my, like, languages degree, I, like, went and worked in France for a bit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I didn't really think about how scary it would be.
Yeah.
But when I got there, like, not being fluent in French, and I think, like, the fact I wasn't with my family for the first time, and I didn't really have any support when I was there.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it was quite daunting, to be fair.
It just kind of dropped you in it in France.
Straight in the deep end, yeah.
Wow. Whereabouts in France did you go?
I was working in Lille in a seafood restaurant.
Wow. How did that happen? How did that opportunity come about?
I found it through like a work experience website in the UK that like set up placements like throughout France.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were there. Just did you know any French when you went? Must have a bit of basic stuff like.
Very, very basic.
Yeah.
Like post GCSE.
Wow. And it's like, I know I go to the cinema, I kick the football, I live near the sea, and you expect us to work in a seafood restaurant.
Yeah. The guy I was working with as well, like, knew that I was trying to learn French, so he refused to speak any English with me. None of the staff could speak any English with me. Yeah, we'd get told off if we spoke English, yeah.
So it was just speak French or just don't speak.
So yeah, a lot of me using my hands. No idea.
A lot of gesturing, like, yes, the oysters. Well, that's mental, man. John, have you got an example of when you've sort of gone out of your comfort zone sort of thing?
I'd say now, because I'd say since I had such like quite a comfortable life in Sunderland, I'd say I'd never really been pushed out of my comfort zone until now, and I'd say now's the only time where I feel like I'm fully out of, like, not out of my depth, but out of my comfort zone, where it's a bit like, at times you do feel like you're a bit out of your depth because you're there like, this is just so new, so different, like moving home, moving away from my girlfriend, yada. It's just like, it's such a different set of like just things around me that it's like sometimes it can be a bit like, but then at the end of it all, you're just saying you're there and you're quite proud of yourself. I'm guessing you were very proud of yourself when the fact that you moved to France.
Yeah.
Because it's such a
massive step, isn't it?
And then it's that jump that you took, and then it's a bit like you feel like a better person for doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I was relatively like unfazed about the whole uni thing. I mean, especially because I did it last year, but yeah, I think like when you push yourself out of your comfort zone even more, then everything becomes easier. Like you don't notice it as much, but then you don't think about it. Like when you go into something, you just don't think about it in the same way you would like before doing something.
Exactly. If you think like a comfort zone, like a circle, you start off with this tiny little circle, and then you push out, and then the circle gets bigger, and then bigger, and then now you've got a comfort zone which is probably the size of this page over there. For those of you who can't see this, but I'm drawing a circle on the page. So on that, basically, like, now all of this stuff that before you'd gone, fuck doing that, you're like, that's fine. So for me, even like walking up to a random stranger and having a conversation, for me now is just natural. I don't even, I just aren't fazed by it. But when I first started, it was a bit like, what could happen here? What's going to go on? But now it's just like, because I've done it so much, it's like, I'm just not fazed. But yeah, John, just to go back there to what you said, what's it been like having a sort of a long distance relationship at uni, especially in the first few weeks? Like,
it's been, I'd say the first few weeks, I'd say I'd probably be able to give a better judgment by the end of, like, you know, the time.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, the first few weeks have been incredibly difficult for me personally. It's like, it's just, you hear all these things before you do it. You hear all these outside judgments and what you need to do, what you should do, what you could do.
Would you say that you feel quite insecure about it?
I was about to say, like, you feel, like, I feel like especially now, you learn what your insecurities are. You learn what you're, like, worried about. And it's one of those, you would never think about it before you went into it.
I'd definitely say, yeah, like, you can trust a person entirely and, like, things will pop up, and yeah, it'll be stuff that, like, just being isolated from them, not being able to talk to them 24/7, things will come into your head that you know, like, irrational.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I do. Yeah, it's one of those. I'm experiencing lots of, like, irrational thoughts quite often, but it's one of those where you just have to hold yourself accountable and go, like, how stupid is that? And then just, like, try and settle yourself sometimes.
No, exactly, because it's like anything, you know, when you first start talking to someone, like, you know very little about them, so your mind fills in all the blanks to put them sort of idealistic, this is what, you know, they should be. And especially when you're away from someone for a long time, you go, okay, what are they doing? I don't know this, I don't know that, let's go to the worst case scenario and assume that's true. And you know, that's the easiest way that your mind does it. Your mind goes, right, it's got to be this. But in reality, it's not like that at all. But you're trying, as you said, hold yourself accountable and go, nope, let's analyse this logically. Like, that's not happening. Clearly, it's not happening. Let's, you know, take a step back. Maybe even, like, ring the person and go, like, you know, how's your day been? And then you're, oh, it was fine. Like, they're not actually doing anything weird. Like,
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm, like, trying to, like, train myself out of it to, like, every time I can catch myself doing stuff like that, I'm like, just, like, wait there, and then just try and think about things logically. But yeah, so I mean, it is very difficult at the start, but then if you see yourself spending the rest of your life with them, then it's like, you know, what's the big deal?
yeah, exactly. Like, it's sort of like a make or break situation, isn't it? Like, no, I mean, like, if you think about it in a positive way, if you're working through it, then in the future you'll be a lot stronger than you would be, like, initially, if you hadn't gone through that.
Yeah, it's one of those where if you get through these 3 years, then it's like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly,
what's stopping you from there? It's like, you wouldn't
Yeah,
spend
man.
these 3 years in a relationship if you didn't want it to go on for, you know, the rest of your life, would you? Because then it would just be a waste of 3 years, especially at university, and so the opportunities that you're turning down, and etc.
exactly. So, like, the girl you've been going out with now, you've been going out for, like, quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years. And did you have much, like, relationships before that, or was this sort of one of the first?
It's my first relationship, and before it I'd kissed one girl about, like, 6 months before.
So this is sort of like the first big.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Most of my first everythings, you know, it was the first date I'd ever been on, and I was 16.
It's quite cute.
But yeah.
That's John, you romantic. Where did you go for your first date?
We went to Durham, actually.
Really?
Exactly.
Come
Took
off
her
here.
here. You know, it's
Where in Durham?
well.
Flat white.
No. I took her around most of the main sites to see. You know, Durham Cathedral. The rowing boats in summer are really nice. To be
I
fair.
imagine, yeah.
Where's the worst place to go on a first date? I'd say Nando's.
I went to Nando's as well.
I've been on
my first
Nando's
date.
on first date.
So,
I'm like the messiest eater on the
man.
planet.
Especially like the wings as well.
That's what I get as well.
Oh, you get.
Like, oh, the fuck. I mean,
And they
straight
just
in the deep
stains your
end.
fingers as well, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Like,
If you can cope with me eating chicken wings, you can cope with anything
Yeah.
with me.
so it's sort of like a filtering process. Like, if
Exactly,
you can get
yeah.
through this, you're done. You're fine. But yeah, man, that's mad. So just to go into a little bit more about that, like, what made you think that this is the one, John? You know, this is the, you know.
Well, at the first, I had like a few hesitations because I heard all these things about uni. You know, you go out, you get single, you do all this random stuff. And I was like, at first I thought, oh yeah, well, by the time I get to uni, I'll definitely be like into that. So initially, I was telling my girlfriend, oh yeah, I think by the time uni comes, I think we might end up like, you know, going our separate ways.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was one of those where just like the closer I got towards it, and the more I imagined like her going off and doing stuff like that, I was like, I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for her on my behalf. And I was just saying, the closer it came, the more off-put I was by it. I was like, no. And then slowly I gradually was there. I was like, no, we're not doing this.
Let's not do that. Yeah, exactly.
If you don't want to do it, then you don't do it. I feel like with relationships, you do what feels right for you in the moment. You can't really, like, with relationships, you don't plan for the future necessarily. I mean, you do, obviously, but, like, if you don't end a relationship because it might not work in the future, end it because it's not working now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, because I was in the mindset of, I'll probably end up doing it at some point. But then I ended up changing my mindset to the idea of, I was like, okay, well, do I want to break up with it today? And I thought, no, so I won't. And then the next day I was like, do I want to break up with it today? No, I don't. So I just kept on doing that. I was like, well, I never actually want to break up with her, so why should I do it now?
You just do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got dumped right before uni last year, but it wasn't a great relationship to start with anyway, and it just, it's kind of like an excuse to end it, I guess.
Yeah, that was the way out, them just saying, okay,
I mean,
you need to be going separate ways.
It needed to end anyway, to be fair. Like,
fair play, man. I think, you know, sometimes there are these like problems that boil under the surface that a lot of the time, unless there's some sort of like event that happens, you just kind of go, yeah, whatever, okay, well, I'll just tolerate that, whatever, yeah, it's fine. And then it comes to something like that, or like anything else, some sort of like little fight or something, and then that's the point where like the lid blows, because when there's no communication, it's all under the surface, and it just like spews out. It's like, well, you did this and all this and all this and all this, and it's like, why didn't you just communicate with me? Like,
that's why there's like, I guess this like view that when you go to uni, relationships don't work out because you stop communicating as often. But if you've got that sorted, then you're sorted.
There's nothing stopping you. Like with the internet as well, like, you know, there's no reason you can't communicate, because there's like so many platforms you can do it on. Like any, you know, it's a bit like the sort of Charlie Puth, like, I think one call away, isn't it? Like anyone is one call away. You just ring them and they're there. You know, it's not like you have to like send a pigeon to them or something, like Telegram or something like that. No, it's just like you're there, you know. Again, it's the time aspect, isn't it?
What's it been for you guys, like with your friends back at home? Are you like still in contact?
Yeah, so like my sort of core friends, the people I'm really close with, I'm still in contact with. Not as much as I'd like, but I still sort of like once a week try and ring them at least once a week.
Really?
But it's hard, mate, to be fair, because there's so much, as I said, there's like, whoa, trying to manage all these different things, all these plates are spinning at once, and you're like, oh, there's this other plate that I've neglected. I've got to look after my friends back home as well. You're like, whoa. And imagine with you, John, with your sort of girlfriend as well, that's a lot more of a bigger commitment than just trying to bring my bloody friend once a week, you know?
Yeah, I'd say it's one of those where you do make sort of some sacrifices. I'd say I've definitely been on like less nights out because of the fact that I'm in a relationship, and some nights I'd rather just like call her than go out and stuff like that. And then it all sort of accumulates, but then it's all worth it really at the end. Like I feel like anything I've sacrificed has all been worth it at the end of the day. So it's when I sacrifice it, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice anymore. It just feels like a different commitment that I'm making.
Exactly, because you know when someone says I'm busy, it's like, no, you're not. Everyone has 24 hours. You're just prioritising different things. And when you look at what someone's priorities are, you look at where their energy's going, and that's obviously where they're going to see results in them sort of areas, whether that be good or bad. You know, so it's just about putting your time into things you actually want to see come to fruition. So if you want to sustain a good relationship, put time into it. You know, if you want to go out loads and then just have a good time, then do that. Neither is better than the other. It's just your choice. And that's the thing. You have so many choices at uni. There's no one right way of doing things. And it's just trying to go, right, okay, yesterday, was that a shit day? Okay, it was. Why? What did we do wrong? What could we do better? And then just remove the stuff you didn't like doing, or the stuff that you feel had no value, sort of like scrolling on your phone, something like that. Cut that out and then go, okay, let's take this time I've wasted, not wasted, but like could have used it in a more productive way, and then put it into something else. But yeah, again, it's just that whole thing, like you can't see your choices in the moment. You can only see them like looking back. But I think someone said it quite well. It's like you could have not come to uni and then started the £1 million business and then been rich, or you could have come to uni and met your wife, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there's no right way. It's just different paths to the same sort of place,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But yeah, so like, what would you say like final? Oh yeah, I didn't even ask you, Josh. What was like sort of like in Durham, sort of like the sort of like dating scene been like for you?
I mean, LGBT dating in Durham isn't really a thing.
Doesn't exist, like
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I've come from Leeds, which is, I don't know, obviously in a big city there's going to be like more diversity when it comes to that. In Durham it's very focused on one night a week at one like pub.
Yeah,
like
that's it.
Osborne's on a Monday night, it becomes a gay bar. Yeah, that's about as deep as it goes. Yeah, but in Leeds you don't really have to think about it. You just go out and you could meet somebody. Here you have to like plan in advance meeting, like being surrounded by the gays, literally.
That's
Yeah.
mad, isn't it? Like you just, cause like, obviously being like straight, you just go out and there's just like loads of people all the time. But
Yeah,
it must be quite hard, isn't it? It's like one night, you know.
I'm used to it now. Like in Freshers Week, it was quite hard. Like when all my friends were getting with people, going back with people. But for me, yeah, like I was always just like third wheeling and shit.
You're like,
so,
it's
yeah.
not Monday night in Osborne, so what do I do? Like,
It's not a Monday night. Yeah.
no. Honestly, that's mad. So obviously you found different ways to sort of sort that out, get through it. So again, it's that sort of like see a problem, even anything, you know, you see something that goes on, you sort of find a solution for it, isn't it? There's always a way to do something if you try, you know.
Yeah. Bit harder, but yeah.
Bit harder, exactly, but nice, man. So I think we are basically coming to time there. But final thoughts. Here's a question I usually ask as my last one. What would you say if you could put a message out into the world that everyone could see? What would you say? So you've got a billboard for the entire world to see. What would it say
I'll
on
let
it?
you start with that one.
Oh no.
It's a big question, to be fair. It's a big question.
I'd say just if you approach everything just with more love, I'd say just do that, you know what I mean? Just
I feel like that's been like the underlying message.
exactly.
This,
Yeah.
I think it
feel
has
like-
to be fair to this podcast, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like just before you do something, just think, oh, is this the most loving thing to do? And if it's not, then don't. And do what is the most loving
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. I feel like before you go into any situation, think about other people as equal to you. Have respect for other people, and like they might not necessarily agree with what you like believe in, but at the end of the day, they're still like on the same level as you. You can't look down on people because they don't necessarily come from your background, the way you think, and yeah.
Exactly, like, you know, just because they're different doesn't mean it's better or worse, it's just different, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Well, thank you so much, lads, for that. And I'd say the sort of message I've really taken is just love is the answer. Just more love is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, thank you so much, lads, for coming on today.
No bother.
And yeah, this has been the Lawless podcast. And we shall see you in the next one. Thank you very much.